94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Continues the manufacturing sector in Kenya. Our guest is Tobias Alando, acting CEO of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Tobias, there are situations, we live in this country, we live in this world, and we're living with daily situations. You may have left here, you're going for a meeting somewhere, and then on your way, there's an emergency. Say, you're even traveling to go visit one of your manufacturer members who is out of Nairobi. On the way, car breaks down, and you're looking at what you need to do. You need to get, hotbed, a flatbed, gari yako si ya vuta, flatbed, bebo ipelekwe kwa garage, call your garage, book them in, they sort it out. So you have to actually call flatbed to come. You have to think about the mechanic. Then you need to think, I need to still get to my meeting. And then you look and see, at this point, I actually don't have money on my, mobile wallet, and pulling from the bank to in these situations. Those situations happen.
Correct.
In life. You will need a companion with you in the pocket. And that companion is Tala. So Tala is not at you because you are reckless and you're expending. It is for such situations. You want then to get some money immediately. You maybe need 25K to sort out all these issues. Go to Tala. You can borrow that 25K. You know you'll be able to repay within a couple of days. Tala asks you, so between 1 and 61 days, how many days, on which date do you want to pay? You can choose. I can say, in the next 15 days, I'm going to pay you back your 25K, or 45 days, or 60 days, or the whole 61 days. You choose for yourself. You will get your money immediately. There's nothing, tuma your logbook, kwanza, can we call somebody? Nothing. As long as you've downloaded Tala, you have it on your phone, you have been borrowing, so you've been working on your credit rating, you access the money to your limit. It's a way to life.
Excellent.
When you talk about convenience in life, Tala is that kind of thing.
Excellent.
Partner. Yeah. So we're still talking about manufacturing.
I mean, I want to look at some of these matters that we seem to have been having a conversation around for way too long. And in as much as, Kenya is our focal point, I think that a lot of the nations around the continent are dealt with this particular, and I'm going to be as bold as call it an illness, because it is an illness when you can't just wake up to decide to do something that you see will save you, essentially. So, are these solutions formulaic in nature? That if you do 1 + 1, you are guaranteed to get 2. Where we know that taxes will generate some kind of income, I think that it is a lazy way of guarantee. That innovation requires that you do certain things in order for you to turn over. And in order for you to turn over, you must sell and make a profit. In order for you to sell and make a profit, you must then you must create. There's no nation on this world who's turning a profit, who's doing export, that has not innovated. Look around. Of course, I'm preaching to the choir because you know exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, is this a formulaic thing whereby you input this number, you mix it up here, you will get this at the end of the day? Is it? Does it work like that? Or is it more subjective?
It's more subjective, I would say so, because in the manufacturing sector, the bit of production is input-output, but there's what is after that. How do I access my markets?
Okay.
How do I sell my products competitively? Looking at the cost of production and everything, how do I now move these goods to the intended people? So where we are at the moment is we are looking at identifying export markets, new export markets, and already there are trade agreements that have been signed in. One is a EU EPA, giving us an access to the EU market. EU, about a population of 300 million people, giving us access to this market is a huge opportunity.
Can I stop you there?
Yes.
How long ago was this initiative put into place?
This about last year.
Exactly.
Last year. In fact, right now we are doing sensitization on the export readiness to all our manufacturers.
Okay.
And the EU market is not all about horticulture. That is what has been done.
Yes.
But, there is more that we can export to the EU.
Like what?
Looking at finished manufactured goods.
Range quarter free access.
A quarter free duty free
access.
Yes.
For anything.
For anything.
We can make our slaughter our cows, get the hide, make our shoes and belts and bags
and sell to the EU.
I'm sorry, I just have to. So we know how stringent EU markets are.
Definitely.
We know that you can't we've seen it from the horticulture, for example. I went to a factory where I saw people measure a French bean, that it has to be so many inches, it has to be this color. The requirements are breakneck, straight. So for them to say, okay, Kenya, we're giving you access, we're allowing you to do 1, 2, 3, come in. One would imagine then that Kenya would say, oh, this is fantastic. Can we identify 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 products that we say we can sell, because you already know what they can let you bring in. It's there. What would the difficulty then present in identifying that product and then get going and say, all right, guys, there's the market. We've been allowed access. This is what we can make. We have the raw material. We have the expertise. What would be the challenge then in saying, okay, in the next 12 months or 24 months, we should make sure that this product then is available? Because some of those challenges that you speak of then do not exist. You don't have to fight for the door. The door is wide open.
Correct.
You don't have to fight for standards. You've already been told what the standards are.
Correct.
You just have to make and deliver.
Yes.
So why would that still be more difficult?
It's I wouldn't say it's difficult. It's that we did not have that opportunity to export quarter-free, duty-free. Now we have it. And we have done it in terms of exporting fresh produce to the EU, meaning we have already complied with the standard. We've understood about the logistics. We've understood about the regulatory requirement. The next step is now to identify which other products can we export to the EU.
Okay.
And encourage every person in this country to have that capability to invest in specific products and export to the EU. This is a huge market for us.
Who's taking lead in this?
We are taking lead
as
BMOs.
Okay.
CAM is just one of the lead BMOs. Chamber is also involved. We are working with EU ambassadors to facilitate this conversation amongst our members and amongst the people of Kenya. We've done a couple of sessions.
You deal with people who are in business.
Yes.
They see opportunity where opportunity does not exist for the rest of us, right?
Correct.
They can see it, smell it from far Kitambo. So as soon as the conversations about EU economic partnership agreement started, there are people who saw the opportunities.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
It's been how many years of the AGOA?
Almost many years, yeah.
It's coming to an end.
Yes.
The people who see opportunity have not gone beyond exporting textile from Kenya.
True.
And yet AGOA has so many options.
Yes.
Again, duty free,
quarter free. But
we haven't taken advantage of AGOA.
We have our lessons that we learned through AGOA.
Okay.
AGOA, we never did even sensitization the way we are doing right now. We never even had technical experts from US, for that matter, to have that conversations with our exporters. EU, based on the learnings from AGOA, we're saying now we need to have our technical experts from that end to come and tell us what are the requirements. And we do a linkage with importers from that end with our suppliers from this end. So we've had our lessons. And I don't think we can repeat the same mistakes of AGOA of only relying on textile to export to the US.
Actually, we can. As Kenya, we actually can, because if you consider the nations that we keep speaking of, the Asian tigers, whom we like comparing ourselves with, if you look at the path they took to industrialization, we had started before them. In 1954, the colonial government set up what they called ICDC. Okay? It was supposed to do exactly what we're discussing here. And it did. And we saw the investments. And they were there. But somehow we seem to have this capacity for always engaging reverse gear. We moved. And the ICDC investments were in every sector. Whether they're talking Japan, whether they're talking Korea, they're talking China, their governments are involved in business enterprises. Governments are actually partners in some of those huge business enterprises.
Correct.
Now, we had a framework for it. What did we do? We're struggling and coming up with new ideas. We actually got it. We had it right. We actually had it right. But somehow, we fumbled it. We fumbled it. We did whatever it is that we do well. And now we're trying to recreate something that we actually had.
To the letter.
Yes.
And that's what I think, and that's why I asked the question about, is it formulaic? Because if it was, then I don't think we would be where we are today. It's not. Because if it was a crunching numbers kind of thing, we would say, okay, well, here, you put in this number, you get this. It must be more than that. But then at the same time, I think once we've introduced this, the human thinking that doesn't allow us for some reason to not want to be in a situation where we are growing negatively. Whereby there have been countries on this planet, and we're not going to even use it. I mean, look at countries like Ireland, for example, who went through a biting famine, but then decided that on the back of that, and it was a decision that we will never be hungry again. They grew their food and stored it. They sold the surplus and then became, again, one of the most wealthy nations in Europe because of the decision. So are we lacking that lurching capacity to say, okay, guys, let us just do it? AGOA is a brilliant example. We had the opportunity. They said, okay, yeah, we're going to open the doors for you. Do 1, 2, 3. We just kind of sat and twiddled our thumbs and looked around and said, okay, let's see if we can do then the opportunities present themselves again, and we're just kind of like, okay, well, yeah, okay.
You know, when we look at AGOA as an example, we need to do a comparison and say, okay, so which other African countries export other than textile to the US? And then we can blame ourselves and say, no, we didn't make use. But in reality, most of the African countries only exported textile because it was easier. But anyway, we have lessons that we've learned from that AGOA. The EU is an opportunity. If we look forward and say, what can we do best? And this is initiative of the private sector. Private sector are people who want to invest, who want to go forward.
Who want to grow.
If the government is lagging, then the private sector definitely will move on their own. So it's an opportunity. It is already signed. The government bit is signed that agreement. And then leave the private sector to move.
And I think, can private sector then work independently without government? I mean, sanction is too difficult a word, but without government involvement, where there are certain things that need to happen. There is at least, the capacity that needs to be built by government. But is it possible to work outside of that perimeter?
No, you can't say we can work without government because this is a negotiation between two nations. So we only have the government to do their bit of signing this agreement. Then the bit of the private sector and say, now move in drones and access this market. That is our responsibility. And we are not going to sleep about it. We will take it by the horns. By the end of the day, it's business. People want to make profit. If you give me an opportunity to make profit in EU, I will go to EU without even hesitating.
Kenya Association of Manufacturers do a sterling job. There's no question about it. Because when I remember when the counties were coming into being and the efforts that the Kenya Association of Manufacturers made to try and ensure that the county governments actually understood what it is they were getting into, trying to get the executive, trying to get the politicians to understand the processes of lawmaking, these things. Kenya Association of Manufacturers has actually done a sterling job. But again, the forward movement that we speak of, without a solid commitment from government, there is a limit to how much we will move, or how quickly we'll move, or where we will actually even get to. It's not that the government isn't involved. No. The committed contribution of government, because that in my opinion, is not there.
I've actually just been thinking, what level of commitment is this that we'd like to see from government, and why is it lacking? Again, I want to just look back into those years. So let's say the last 22 years, all right? Mwai Kibaki comes in, economy starts growing, get into 2005 referendum, the politics of the country for the next 2 years are just horrible. 2007, then again, we start picking up. And like you said, we hit a peak of over 10%, 11% contribution to GDP. Our GDP was growing. Our GDP since Kibaki left to now has continued to grow. We are at what now? 13 trillion, right? But our contribution of the manufacturing
sector
has gone down. That means no proper investment, new investment into it. As the economy is growing, there's no investment in tandem. But look at what the government has been doing all those times. In the Kibaki years, that's when, for example, the issue of power, they started addressing the issue of power. Split this thing, have producer, have transmission, have distribution. Let's start investing into looking at how we can expand our power mix. Create GDC, go and do exploration of geothermal and how much we need, and so on and so forth. Those things didn't come into fruition until after 2013. Geothermal, we increased. We have Lake Turkana wind power. We have the solar in Garissa, and so on and so forth. So our power mix has increased. But then our cost of power is still high. Our transmission lines have increased. Gachagua has actually done many kilometers of transmission line, but our cost of power is still high. Government has a ministry dedicated to trade since Kibaki into Uhuru 1, into Uhuru 2, into Ruto. There is a trade ministry with a minister whose specific focus is industry. But yet, 11 to 7. What's wrong? I mean, I'm still struggling to figure out what exactly is not working. So what needs to be fixed?
So, and probably that's why we've had almost three trade and industry ministers in the last couple of years, because maybe the top level doesn't see things moving, and that's why they're making the changes. But from where we sit, key actions need to be taken to ensure that the manufacturing sector grow. Taxation, I mentioned taxation regime in this country. I mentioned predictability of the policy environment. I mentioned issues around VAT refund. For example, if you take just a simple example, KRA gets an allocation of 2.5 billion for VAT refunds. Yes, there's a claim of about 4 billion, leaving a deficit of 1.5 billion every month of VAT refunds. And of course, they say it takes time to verify some of the VAT refunds. Some of them are not correct. But anyway, if they automate and systemize that process to weed off the bad ones and pay the right people, then we'll have this money circulating. We've had also issue about pending bills. The government is the largest buyer in this country. When you have about 800 billion pending bills, both national and county government, just imagine that amount circulating in the economy. It will be very good. The growth will be tremendous. Everybody will benefit. But right now we have people who have not been paid. You've supplied the national and the county government, but you've not been paid.
Yet all these things, Tobias, are things that, as you say them, they're obvious.
Yes.
Even those in government see them as obvious. In fact, the manufacturing sector has had its voice in government. Somebody who was in the position that you're sitting in for over 10 years at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, Betty Maina, moved in to become a minister.
Yes.
And a minister for trade.
Yes.
So we can say the manufacturing sector had actually the strongest voice in government.
Started off actually as PS and moved on to
CS. The current CS in the Treasury, Dr. Chris Kiptoo, was a PS in trade. So if you talk about even at the Treasury, you have advocates who have sat with you, who have understood what you're saying, So where is the disconnect? Why is it that these obvious things become difficult.
I think
some point.
We must admit the political environment is typically different. There are a lot of interests, even when you want to push policies.
How is that the political environment, Tobias? If you are talking about this unbridled greed that we seem to have adopted as a growth culture in this country, it isn't political. It may be politically motivated or supported, but it isn't political. It's anything that the government is involved in. When you talk about the 800 billion pending bills, those were bills which the monies were budgeted for, the projects were budgeted for, the money was supposed to have been paid. They are pending because they were not paid, and yet the money still doesn't exist. So, do the maths. Where do you think the money went? We know that money walks on its own at midnight. Did it really leave? Did it acquire wings? Because the walking we understand. All I'm saying is, there is a conversation, and that's why I talked about commitment. There is a conversation about commitment. The thing that characterized the Kibaki government was that the commitment.
The commitment, yeah.
They said they did. The commitment brought about the change. Here, it is understood, but you don't see commitment. From the time Uhuru came in, one saw some form of commitment, but the sort of commitment that is supposed to pull us up and take us to the takeoff stage, that is not there. If it was there, with all the resources we know we have,
I think it's been there.
Where?
It's been there.
Where?
In terms of infrastructure development has continued. Those economic trade agreements that we're talking about started then.
Exactly.
Even the conversation with Trump about the future after AGOA, what then, was still in government.
The commitment.
There's all those conversations that are happening, and you're like, all right, how do we develop? How do we expand? How do we?
That's not commitment. That is understanding that these are the things you do to hoodwink the public, that you're actually doing something, and yet nothing happens. Because if it happened, you would see it.
No, but the signing of these trade agreements, that's not hoodwinking. It has happened. It has happened.
Signing is hoodwinking. You sign so that we have this belief that something is going to happen. If it happened, then why is it that the change we keep talking about never happens? Why?
It will take time. I was just with the EU ambassador in Machakos County, educating our members and our manufacturers and traders of the opportunity in EU. If there was no signing of this agreement, would we be sitting with the EU ambassador to talk about this?
You know, Tobias, the effort that KM makes is not what I'm talking about here.
Okay.
It is government.
It's government. The efforts that you make are clear, and the commitment is clear. I'm talking about government.
Tobias, in about 30 seconds,
yes,
what must we do to realize these changes we need?
We need to be intentional, very intentional as a country, and of course committed as a country and as a people, and realize that our neighbors and our counterparts are not sleeping in the job. They're growing their manufacturing sector. They're growing their businesses. Investment in those regions is also growing. So we need to be intentional as a country and say this is where we want to go, also to grow our manufacturing sector.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very well said. Tobias Alando, Acting CEO of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. News time, 8 a.m.